In ancient Rome, when a military commander would win an especially magnificent campaign or battle, they would have a custom. It's called a Roman triumph that would be held in the city of Rome. That is really a lot like the World Series parade that was held here in Houston last year, or the one that was held in Atlanta for my Braves the year before that, and hopefully, Mike, will be held in Atlanta again this November. But this is really what it was. The commander would come back, and the people would go out of the city gates to meet him there, and he would come in triumphal procession through the streets of Rome. And he would have with him, actually, in tow, the prisoners of war that he had taken captive, and carts full of all of the treasure and plunder that they had won on their campaign. And the streets would be thronged with people chanting praises of this great general. And there would be flowers hung from every window and flowers thrown out in the streets. All of this in great adoration and honor for this military commander. Well, several historians tell us that one element of that practice was that there would be a slave, a servant, who would ride along in the chariot with the general and would stand behind him and would hold over his head the laurel wreath, the laurel crown, and would say in his ear as they went through the streets 2 words in Latin: memento mori. Translated, remember, you are mortal. Remember, you are mortal. I hope you have your Bible with you this morning. I'd ask you to take it out and turn to the book of James. The book of James, towards the end of our New Testament, James chapter 4, and we're going to be looking at the last section of that chapter, James 4, verse 13 to 17 this morning. Anytime I get up to speak before you, I consider myself your servant, here to present something from the Word of God to help you, to encourage you in some way. But this morning, I perhaps view myself in line with our illustration, that I'm like that servant here to say into your ear, so to speak, this morning, memento mori. Remember, you are mortal, and you and I are all going to die. Now, with that cheerful introduction, let me say good morning, and it's good to be together, as always is the case. It's good for us to be back after being gone last week, and with those of you that are visiting with us and those that are regular, it's just encouraging to spend time together, worshiping God in song, remembering the Lord's death, remembering His love for us, and hopefully in the next few minutes being encouraged and convicted by the words of God. And I do hope that I can serve you in that way this morning. Let's begin by reading our text, James chapter 4, verse 13 to 17, and we'll make a few comments about what James has to say. James 4:13, come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city and spend a year there and engage in business and make a profit. Yet you do not know what your life will be like tomorrow. You are a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and also do this or that. But as it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. Therefore, to one who knows to do the right thing and does not do it, to him it is sin. This passage is a stern warning. You see that in the first 2 words, come now, right? This is, some translations say, listen up. This is your mom using your middle name and calling you out, saying, come now, listen up to what I have to say. Who is this rebuke? Who is this stern warning for in James 4:13? Well, it is for those who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such a city and spend a year there, engage in business, and make a profit. So what's the problem here? Is the problem in planning and making preparations for what I'm going to do? Well, I don't think so. I think we'd say that's not necessarily the problem. And we could go to the book of Proverbs, for instance, and we could talk about how the wise man or woman in the fear of the Lord is proactive, makes plans, makes preparations. Godly men and women throughout the Bible, and God himself plans and prepares ahead of time. So the planning is not the problem, but it is a warning for anyone who assumes that they know when they will do something, today or tomorrow, where they will go, such and such a city, how long they will spend there, a year, what they will do, engage in business, and what the result of that will be, make a profit, without factoring God into the equation. That is a sober warning, because that describes all of us at some point. That all of us at some point have assumed that we know what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, and what the result will be. And I want to suggest to you this morning that this is a particularly big problem for us because of the wealth and the ease that we enjoy in our society. That actually may be in James's mind in this section. You notice in verse 13, the plans had to do with doing business and making a profit, so he could be specifically addressing wealthy merchants. But if you look in chapter 5, verse 1, the very next section is another come now for the rich. So maybe the rich are in view in this warning as well. Because in any age, in James's day or in ours, those who are wealthy are more protected against the unpredictable nature of life, because we have the means to prevent misfortune and then to recover from misfortune more easily. That's always been true. But that is true for us now in the 21st century America. That's true to the nth degree. I mean, we enjoy a wealth today, all of us, even those among us that are not as wealthy as others, any of us today enjoy wealth that was unimaginable and ease that was unimaginable in places around the world now and in history in the past. And especially with the technological advancements that we have made as a society, we have largely mitigated the idea of disaster or misfortune. I mean, think about all the things that have ravaged humanity throughout history in an unpredictable way and made life seem like chaos. Things like weather. I mean, that's just a classic example that people throughout history, anytime the weather could turn and it could ruin our year, it could take away our lives. But, we have weather forecasting now, so we know what's coming. We can prepare. And for the most part, we have infrastructure, and we all live in homes that protect us against all but the very worst of any weather events. Or sickness. Think about bubonic plague or any other disease throughout history that has just wiped people out. All of a sudden, a third of the population gone. Well, now we have our vaccines, and we have our treatments, and especially, again, if you have means, you can purchase medicine and get treatment and withstand that. None of these things are wrong, of course. But what is wrong is allowing these comforts that we enjoy to fool us into thinking that we know what's going to happen or that we are in control of our lives. That is wrong. And in fact, James uses strong language in this warning. Notice in verse 16, he says, as it is, you who say this, that we're going to do this and leave God out of it. He says, as it is, you boast in your arrogance, and all such boasting is evil. Notice that James is not saying, if you explicitly deny God's involvement, if you walk around saying God has no place, God is not in control, then that's arrogant and that's evil. No, he says just to leave God out of it and not to acknowledge God's sovereignty, God's rule, God's control, that is arrogant. Because the reality is, we have no idea. And we are not in control, even though we may live lives that are comfortable and secure. All of us face reminders of this reality at some point in our lives. My reminder came when I was a sophomore in college. I was Aaron's age. And at the end of the school year, there's an honor that was given out, the school that I attended. And it's voted on by the student body. And it's presented to one male student, one female student. It's the kind of thing where, you don't know who's going to win. You show up that day in chapel, and there's a ceremony to announce the winner. And lo and behold, I was chosen. Ceremony took place. My name was called. Go up on the stage, receive the honor. Very nice moment. And get down off the stage afterward, and there's my mom and dad coming from the back of the auditorium. Surprised me completely. They had been informed ahead of time, and they drove the 7 or 8 hours from Atlanta to be there to witness me and celebrate with me in winning this honor. A very happy moment. In my limited life and short life up to that point, a very nice, very special thing. But later that day, Mom and Dad took me out to eat. And there at the Jason's Deli on Fowler Avenue, they informed me that Mom's breast cancer had returned after 15 years of living in remission. And of course, we didn't know at that point, but within 2 years, basically, she would be gone. You do not know what tomorrow will bring. And all of us have stories just like this. Tragic loss, sudden death, near misses that remind us of this thing. And one of the reasons I've thought about this passage is because I feel like even just this year, our hearts have been broken over and over again by the unpredictable nature of life. As we have seen parents, new parents, eagerly anticipating the birth of their child, planning for a life with that child, only to have that child born with a very severe birth defect that alters the course of their life forever, or to have that child pass away before it even takes his first breath in the world. We've seen young moms and young dads or dads of young kids taken from their families suddenly, without warning. And we've seen men like Danny Dow, Tony Mock, who a year ago today, in good health, doing well, enjoying life with their family, one day they're healthy, the next day they're not. And within weeks or months, they're gone. What is your life? James asks in verse 14. It is just a vapor. It's a mist. It's here today and it's gone tomorrow. All of us are mortal. All of us are going to die, and the time is coming sooner than later. It won't be very long. And so, what is the solution? If we are not to assume that we know what's going to happen, assume that we are in control, and just live our lives without acknowledging God's sovereignty, then what are we supposed to do? Well, what's interesting is that the solution in verse 15 is in the words that we use. The problem in verse 13 was the words that we say. We say we're going to do these things without mentioning God. The solution in verse 15 is to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. This has kind of gone out of fashion. I'm not exactly sure why that is. I have some theories, but you don't hear people say as much anymore, God willing or if the Lord wills. I kind of want to bring that back. I don't kind of want, so I want to bring that back. Because when we say it, it reminds us. It catches us in that moment and maybe catches the person we're talking to. That anything that we think we're going to do, if the Lord doesn't will it, it's not going to happen. And did you notice what James says? He doesn't just say, if the Lord wills, and then repeats verse 13. He says, if the Lord wills, we will live. Our very lives are in the hands of God. Are you making your heart beat right now? Are you in control of that? Our very lives are in God's hands. And if He wills that we don't live anymore, then we don't live anymore. If the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. But of course, I will grant that they're not supposed to just be empty words or things that we just say. We're supposed to think it, to acknowledge it, to internalize it, we would say, to believe it, and to live like it. What does that mean? What would it look like to live out the "if the Lord wills" mentality? Well, I think the biggest thing is that it would give us the needed perspective. It gives us the needed perspective to acknowledge in every moment, at every day, that everything is in God's hands and that my life is just that mist, that vapor. And to see the blip that is my life in context of the eternity of God. It gives us perspective. And one of the things that perspective gives us is gratitude. It gives us gratitude, understanding the reality of our short life. This language of vapor reminds me of the book of Ecclesiastes. You may remember that the preacher talks about life being hevel. It's a word that means smoke or mist or vapor. That's the way life is. And one of the main points of Ecclesiastes is when you try to hold on to life, the hevel of life, when you try to control it, then you're only going to be frustrated. And that's the way that I think we are. When we assume that we are in control, we try to make everything the way we want it to be, hold on to everything as tightly as possible. We're frustrated, we're discontent, we're bitter, we're ungrateful. But if we would realize that our life, as short as it is a gift from God, then we would be thankful for it. At the beginning of last year, one of my very good friends, he and his wife gave birth to their third little girl. But when she was born, they discovered that she had 4 different heart defects and that she was going to have an open heart surgery at about 6 months of age. And she's doing great, and she's healthy, and she's well, and they are thriving. But of course, those first few months of the little girl's life were uncertain as they were anticipating that surgery. Open heart surgery on an infant, you never know what's going to happen, and an uncertainty about whether the procedure would even do what it's supposed to do and what her life would look like afterward if she made it through. So I remember talking to him at some point in those months leading up to the surgery, and he said something like this. He said, we are at peace. Because we are thankful for the time, no matter what happens, we are thankful for the time that God has given us with our little girl. And frankly, I don't know if I'm there yet. I hope that I could say that, but I'm not sure that I could. But that is exactly it. No matter what we've been given, it is a gift from God. And all of our lives, 80, 90 years, or 70 or 80, as Psalm 90 said, or much shorter than that. Life is a gift. Everything we've been given by God, who is, according to James chapter 1 and verse 17, the giver of every good and perfect gift. It is a blessing that we should be grateful for. And our perspective in the "if the Lord wills" mentality perhaps would give us that gratitude. But it would also give us, I think, focus to say and to mean and to live if the Lord wills. If you go back to verse 13, I understand that the main problem is the making of plans without acknowledging God's will, God's sovereignty. But it also seems to me that the plans in verse 13 imply somewhat of a self-centered focus on the temporal things. We're going to go do business, make a profit, come back, get rich. And again, wealth seems to be here in this context. That there is a warning about wealth. If you just looked at chapter 5, verse 1 to 6, it's actually a very intense warning. So, warning to you before you read it. James is very, very hard on those who have wealth, saying that you're hoarding up all these possessions that are rotting away. They're coming to nothing, and you've made your whole life about the accumulation of stuff that rusts and rots. If we would see our life as a vapor, we could probably better avoid that trap. In fact, all of this reminds me of a couple things that Jesus said. One is the parable of the rich fool, you'll remember. He had his plans, did he not? I got all this stuff. I'm going to get a storage unit. I'm going to build bigger barns, bigger houses to put all this stuff in. And what did God say? You fool. Tonight, your soul is required of you. You do not know what is going to happen today or tomorrow. Tonight, your soul is required of you. And what will become of you who has spent your life accumulating riches that are as fleeting as the mist which is our life? And so Jesus will say in Matthew 6, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. Instead, lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. How? By focusing on what is eternal, seeing our lives in the context of eternity, and serving our one master with undivided loyalty. And so this perspective of if the Lord wills, I think would change our plans and the focus of our life to be about the eternal and not the temporal. And not just with our wealth and the way that we use our money, but in our families. How would I talk to my wife? How would I treat my children if I really believe that today could be my last day with them? Or at work, how would I handle a crisis that comes up at work if I really believed that my life is a mist, that it's here today, it's gone tomorrow, and I have eternity in front of me? If the Lord wills, gives us perspective, gratitude, focus, and along with that, it gives us the urgency to do the right thing today. I think that's why James ends this paragraph here with verse 17. In light of God's sovereign control as the eternal King, in light of the fact that our life is a mist, here today, gone tomorrow, and we do not know what today or tomorrow will bring, in light of that, verse 17, to the one who knows to do the right thing and does not do it, to him it is sin. That's generally true, of course. But I think the point is, do the right thing because you do not know how much longer you have. So do what you know you need to do today. So I want each of us to ask ourselves that question right now. What is the right thing that I know that I need to do, that you know you need to do, that you haven't done? James would say, the Lord would say, do it today. Partly because we actually can't do it tomorrow, right? Today's the only day that we can do anything with. And so I can't spend more time with my kids next week because I don't have next week. I have right now. But more to the point here, we don't know if we will even have the afternoon today or tomorrow. Is there a sin that you need to repent of? Do it today. Is there an apology that you need to offer to someone that you have hurt in your home, in this church, somewhere else? Do that today. Is there forgiveness that you need to offer someone? Do that today. Are there commitments that you need to make and then start to spend time with the Lord in prayer, to be a spiritual leader in your family? You may not have tomorrow or next week or next year when things settle down. None of us is guaranteed the next hour. Do the right thing today. And that's where we're going to end this morning. And we have this custom, do we not, that we sing a song. And we usually ask people that if they need to come forward, they can come forward. And we say a lot that, of course, is not the only time that you can come forward to confess a sin, to get prayers from the congregation, or to put on the Lord in baptism. Of course, there are other times to do that. But what I want to say right now is that you don't know that you're going to have another time. That time is not guaranteed. And so if you need help and coming down to the front and speaking with one of our shepherds and requesting prayers of the congregation, that's what you need to do. Do it right now. Do it today before it's too late. And of course, if you have not yet obeyed the command to be baptized into Christ, to have your sins washed away, to be in a right relationship with God, it won't be very long before He returns or before your life ends. So don't wait any longer. Answer the call. Come to the front now as we stand and sing this song.